You are listening to the New American Media.
Live from the Milky Way galaxy, the solar system, planet Earth, North America, the United States of America, California, Los Angeles. Hello, everybody. Welcome. July 12th, 2013. Welcome to the Unhappy Hour here on the NewAmericanMedia.com and the TNAM Radio Network. I am your host, Brian Engelman. Welcome back, everyone. It's been a crazy week. Crazy week in sports. Crazy week in the world. Got a lot going on. I mean, every time you turn around the news and flip things around, you're looking at George Zimmerman's trial, of course. This is a sports show, so we're going to get to the Zimmerman stuff, and we're going to welcome special guest, Liberty journalist Ben Swann. I had the pleasure of speaking with Ben Swann, formerly of Fox Cincinnati, over on my good friend Blake the Eccentric Wally's program, Eccentric Perspective, on Independence Day. What a great show that was. Go check that out, eccentricperspective.com. It's embedded at thenewamericanmedia.com. On podcast, you can check it out, search Eccentric Perspective, and download it. The July 4th Independence Day episode where Blake and I talked with Ben Swann. But Ben is going to be our special guest on Agree to Disagree coming up. That will be at 5 p.m. Pacific. You can listen to that live over at thenewamericanmedia.com. Just click on that little button over toward the middle of the right side. It's a flag, and it says TNAM Radio, because the news always matters. I love occasionally throwing in that stereotypical radio host voice, because the news always matters. Sorry about that. That's really creepy and weird. Anyhow, click on that. You can listen to it live. Of course, there are many other ways that we disseminate our information. And thank you to everybody who helped us surpass 100,000 video views over at youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. Check it out. We have sports, we have spirituality, we have politics, we have humor, a whole bunch of different stuff over music, different interviews, archived shows you can go back. And in fact, I did go back and I looked. Ben Swann has been a guest on our program back when he interviewed President Obama in Ohio prior to the election last year, so you can check out that archived show. But yeah, I was looking back. We're coming up, special guest on the Unhappy Hour. We have two special guests, really. I want to talk about Zak Baris first. He's an NBA scout, lifelong Cleveland sports fan. But about a year and a half ago, I think it was about a year ago, we were talking about a potential trade, a 3-team trade, bringing Andrew Bynum to Cleveland. Well, it turns out we didn't have to give up a ton of assets, just a couple of bucks and cross the fingers. Andrew Bynum coming to Cleveland. But go ahead, check back. That's why we archive our shows. But thank you for everybody helping us eclipse 100,000 video views for sure. It's been pretty sweet. It's been a good 26, 27 months here at thenewamericanmedia.com. It's a labor of love. We're growing each and every day. So check it out. Click subscribe over there, youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia. Follow us on Twitter and join the 30-something thousand people that are also following us there. That you can find us at American_. Wait, hang on, in radio guys. You can find us on Twitter at American_media_. Oh, that's so weird. Anyhow, American_media_. Please check it out. Follow us on Twitter. Search The New American Media spaces. Put the spaces in between there. The New American Medias if you're typing it on Facebook, and like our page, because that is starting to get really active. We've gone in phases. First we built the website, then we got the radio show, then it was Twitter, then it was YouTube, and now it's really kind of focusing on Facebook. So join us over there, share it with your friends. So Zak Baris is going to join us in just a moment or three. We're going to talk about Andrew Bynum and all the other wheelings and dealings going on in the world of the NBA. We're going to talk about the Nets, of course. We're going to talk about the Warriors, Meta World Peace, a whole bunch of stuff going on, all the free agency moves, all the fun stuff going on. We will talk with him. And then coming up after that, we're going to have a split show today. We have to go a little out of character. We normally broadcast at 4 p.m. Pacific. Long story, because we used to be 3:30. Now we switched to 4, but Zak's only available at 3:30, so we had to switch today. But coming up, that would make it at 4:30. We're going to have Corey Cogdell. Who is Corey? She's a girl. One of those names you get. Is it Pat? Chris? Is that a girl or a guy? So, yes, she won a 2008 Olympic bronze medal for women's trap shooting. She's a shooter. Of course, blending. We like to blur the lines between sports and politics over here, especially with this George Zimmerman, everybody talking about it, and the right to self-defense, and how far is too far. She's going to bring an interesting perspective, an eccentric perspective, if you will, Shout out to Blake Wally over there at eccentricperspective.com. Anyway, Corey Cogdill will join us. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Shooting, being a girl shooting, the Olympics, Second Amendment. It'll be fun. We're going to have a split show today. And, of course, Liberty journalist Ben Swan following after that. So, thanks for sticking around with us for all of that. We call that housekeeping around here. Sorry, I'm going to stop doing that. That's just so weird. We're going to bring in Zak Baris. I just want to talk some basketball right now. I like that. Especially when the Cavs get a cool free agent. I'm all right with that. If his creaky knees. If the knees hold up.
Hello?
Zach, you're live on The Unhappy Hour. Welcome to the program again. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Living the dream, can't complain. Same story as usual. Let me ask you this: how is Andrew Bynum doing? He didn't.
From what I understand, he's doing pretty well. I tend to think the Cavs did their homework on him. I don't think they would have just thrown $6 million at him if his knees were that bad. I mean, everything I've heard on medical reports, I tend to think he'll probably be all right.
Well, if that's the case, why didn't he have more of an interest on the free agent market? Because that's a curious question I have.
I don't know. I think it was just a lot of teams didn't have the cap room the Cavaliers had. I think that was the problem.
Oh, okay. Because the reports today are saying that the Cavs are still working on finalizing that contract with Bynum.
Yeah, I mean they're just working out the minute details, on it, but it'll all be cleared up.
Well, I definitely want to get your thoughts on Jarrett Jack and Earl Clark and how they might contribute to the Cavs. I think you were saying that this is going to instantly propel the Cavs to being a solid team in the East. But let's talk about Bynum for a little bit. First, let's talk about his knees. Then let's talk about his attitude. Maybe throw in the details of the contract: $6 million guaranteed, $24 million if he hits incentives. Go ahead.
So essentially, for the Cavs, Dan Gilbert's had no problem throwing money at players over the years. He acquired, I think it was an extra $10 to $14 million for Baron Davis. I forgot what the exact number was. He acquired Luke Walton's extra $6 million to basically draft Sergei Karasev. He has no problem taking on money. So this is basically a no-risk deal for the Cavaliers, especially when you have an owner that's willing to spend money. It doesn't put them in the luxury tax. And if he does go back to all-star form and he does play, it allows the Cavaliers to essentially have the top 3 center in the NBA. Just because Bynum, it's a team option on Bynum. So if he sucks, let him go. And if he's solid, you keep him, and he's a chip to recruit LeBron back next year for the Cavaliers. It's definitely a really solid addition for the Cavs. I really like it for them. And especially if he's healthy this year, and you can get 60 to 65 games out of him. And you can manage to get, and you put Verjao back in a 6-man role where he's better off playing the 4 anyways. Verjao has never been great against dominant offensive centers. He always does well guarding the 4 instead of the 5. So it puts Verjao in a much better position. It allows Thompson to space the floor a little more too. The Cavaliers' front court is absolutely just loaded. You have Earl Clark and Anthony Bennett who can both play the 3 or the 4. They're both, tweeners. Earl Clark had a great year, for the Lakers last season. I think especially in bigger minutes, he can contribute. His numbers, his PER per 36 minutes last year, he was averaging over a double-double. He's averaging almost 12 rebounds per 36 minutes. He'll be an instant contributor on the offensive and defensive end for the Cavaliers. This essentially puts Tyler Zeller as, is the 10th or 11th man in the rotation, which is where you want him. I was actually the first big man off the bench.
Yeah, and I was actually just going to bring that up. Two points really. I was going to talk about the Baron Davis deal, taking on all that money so that we could get another chip, and that chip turned into be the lottery pick that got Kyrie Irving, that really stabilized the franchise to build around with a nucleus. But they also brought in Shaquille O'Neal. They also brought in Anton Jameson and Ben Wallace. Like, they were big spenders back when they were trying to keep LeBron really happy. Dan Gilbert has never been shy about spending money to, improve the team, or try to improve the team at least. But yeah, talk about Tyler Zeller a little bit, because he's not a starter in the NBA, but he could be a solid player.
No, Zeller will never be a starter in the NBA. He could be a very solid backup, though, and that's what you want. They didn't draft Zeller. I think they take him 18 or 19 last year. You weren't drafting Zeller to be your future starting center. Whenever you're drafting a big, in the mid to late teens of the NBA draft, you're looking just for size, purely size. That's
right.
What you get the Spencer Hawses. Those are the types of centers you're getting. Very rarely are you drafting a superstar center. Usually the star centers are gone in the first 5 picks because it's so rare with the combination being, a great center to have the size anymore. You just don't see skilled NBA centers. There are no Hakeem Olajuwons anymore, Patrick Ewings. You don't have those guys anymore. And, the game has really changed. It's become a point guard-driven league. So it's nice if you can get a center like that late in the draft, late in the first round, mid to late, like Tyler Zeller. This is what you want. The Cavaliers have a lot more depth. Last year they had the worst bench in the NBA.
Right.
This year they have arguably one of the top 3 or 4 benches in the NBA. You signed Jarrett Jack in free agency, who's arguably the best backup point guard in the NBA. I don't think anybody's going to sit there and basically, try to argue with that one. I mean, unless Mo Williams is backing up somewhere, I think he's a great fit, especially you bring in a veteran presence. He's only 29 years old. You put him in there with Kyrie Irving, Deion Waiters. And especially if Waiters doesn't progress like he did last year, Jarrett Jack and Kyrie make a dominant backcourt. And that's who you want in the fourth quarter anyways to win games. You need that veteran presence in there. And look what he did in the playoffs, too, against, San Antonio, and look what he did against Denver. He was so clutch, and that's exactly what they added. They added a piece who could easily, if he's starting, could average a double-double every night if he's starting. The guy put almost 13 and 6 last year as a backup. So, you're going to be able to get 25 to 35 minutes out of him every night. He's a stable presence, and he's a Cavalier killer, too. He's dominated the Cavs every year. They always lose to Jarrett Jack team.
That's like the Browns signing somebody
addition.
good. That's like the Browns signing somebody good off the Steelers. It's a double whammy. You put him on your
except
team.
when it comes to the Browns, it probably sucks.
Okay, all right. I'll give you that. It's been so long since the Browns have been competitive, but I'm actually getting ready for football, getting excited, seeing Urban Meyer and seeing the Browns stuff going on. But yeah, I mean, you talked about this on previous shows. I mentioned in the beginning that a year ago you and I were talking about a potential 3-way trade to moving Dwight Howard and Andrew Bynum and Bynum landing in Cleveland. And turns out we didn't have to give up much, $6 million guaranteed, $24 million. But you also talked about in a previous show that the Cavs were a very competitive team, but as soon as the starters came out, I mean, they would just get smoked. So you said they might have one of the top 3 benches in the NBA. Did I hear that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely. I mean, don't forget, you just added the number 1 overall pick. If he's not starting, Anthony Bennett, he's an instant contributor. Alonzo G, who's a great 8th, 9th man on a good team, suddenly he's sitting there as an 8th, 9th man. C.J. Miles is no longer, your 6th man. I mean, the Cavaliers added a ton of depth. I mean, you're looking at guys, you're looking at Varejao now. You're Varejao, Jarrett Jack, and Anthony Bennett, you're 6, 7, 8 guys off the bench.
Wow.
I don't know in what particular order, but I assume Jack will be 6 and Varejao, will be 6A basically. But, I mean, those are your 6th and 7th men now right there, and Bennett, the number 1 overall pick, is going to be probably your 8th guy.
Wow.
I tend to think he'll be starting, though, in a couple weeks or a couple months, depending on how he progresses. But he'll be starting at some point during the year, as my guess, is starting small forward if the Cavaliers don't bring in anyone else in free agency. They already missed on Karolinko. So my guess is that means Earl Clark becomes your 8th guy. So the Cavaliers just improved the depth a lot. Plus you drafted Sergei Karasev. You have C.J. Miles, like I said, Alonzo G, Tyler Zeller. They're stacked. Their bench is stacked now. Their starting lineup, especially if you get progression out of Kyrie, I mean, he's already a top 5 point guard in the league. Imagine what he can do this season, actually having talent around him. Being able to do the pick and pop with Anthony Bennett, having Andrew Bynum for the pick and roll now if he's healthy. And I'm going to keep reiterating. I'm going to not even say the word healthy anymore because I'm done reiterating my point. I think I've said it in the last, in text messages over the last couple of days, my friend.
True.
I think I've said it 1,000 times. So I'm done saying if healthy.
I need to get you a thesaurus then, Zach. I need to get you a thesaurus for alternate words to say the same thing as if he's healthy.
So we're just assuming he can play at this point.
Okay.
And if he can, then the Cavaliers are going to be a playoff team. And they're going to present a lot of problems for teams because they have an extremely skilled point guard in Irving. If Waiters progresses like he should, you're looking at a guy who can easily put up 16 to 17, maybe 18 a night on any given night, on average. Small forward, I really don't know what kind of production they're going to get out of Clark and Bennett. I really just don't know. But you know what you're getting out of, imagine having a front court of Bynum and Varejao. Defensively, it's an extremely strong defensive front court. Especially, they're going to be getting tons of offensive rebounds. Bynum grabbed 30 rebounds in a game, and Varejao's had in the 20s multiple times in the last couple seasons.
Well, I'm thinking back to the Shaquille O'Neals, the Jonas Ilgauskas, Ben Wallace. I mean, when you have a deep presence, when you got a lot of height, a lot of aggressive, tough defenders, it completely changes the game for another team. They don't want to go in there because it's the roll of the dice is much less likely to work out in their favor. So it turns into less high percentage shots, more perimeter shots. It just completely changes the complexity of the game. And when you're grabbing those offensive rebounds, you stop a team from screwing up. Oh, but they still got their points. I mean, that's a huge deal when you can change the dynamics of an NBA game like that. So I mean, just think about Varejao, how good of a season he was having before his injury.
Well, exactly, and look at the Cavaliers' front court depth. You don't need Varejao playing 40 minutes a night to win ball games anymore.
Right.
The Cavaliers' bench was so awful. They would take all these leads in the fourth quarter last year, and they'd blow them all.
Yeah.
The bench was so terrible. This year, you've stabilized your bench. Your second unit. You can come in there. It's like I still remember the Cavaliers in 2010. You'd come in there, and the bench would be Delonte West. They had tons of talent off the bench. And they would kill teams when the second unit would come in. You'd be able to sit your starting lineup the entire fourth quarter. It didn't matter. When you'd be up by 16 points, you didn't have to worry about blowing a lead. Byron Scott always seemed like he would always stick in Kyrie Irving at the 5-minute mark in the fourth quarter last year, and it'd be too late. It'd be too late in a lot of games.
Right.
Multiple. They were the first team in forever to blow multiple 20-point leads heading into the fourth quarter. I think it happened 3 or 4 times last year in one season. They lost.
Jeez,
And don't expect that to happen this year.
Well, they also had the opportunity to break that Heat streak as well, and they were up by, 20 or 25?
28 at one point.
Oh,
27, 28 points.
Yeah, I mean...
and then they were down by double digits in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and you're labeling it absolutely correctly. They're a team that can compete. They're a team that can build leads. They couldn't hold the leads with such a weak bench, and that has all changed. Talk about the role that Chris Grant has played in all of this. How do you
I think
like
Chris
his
Grant
drafting?
has played his hand very well. I mean, if the Cavaliers, and this is, people can say I'm an idiot. I really don't care.
Me neither. That's why I do radio.
I've used the analytical projection system that I use to basically balance it out with Bynum healthy. This is what I determined. Bynum healthy for 60 games. You got Kyrie for 65, and you got Varejao for 60.
Okay.
And if you have that, the Cavaliers will win anywhere at a minimum of 48 games, all the way up to 56, depending on how many games you get out of those guys.
Okay.
But you're looking at a team that's going to be no worse than the 5th seed. Like I said earlier, if they're healthy, they're going to be no worse than the 5th seed in the East. I think they're better than the New York Knicks when they're healthy. I think they just have a lot of young talent, especially. It's just going to keep looking better and better throughout the season. And I think these guys just have to be impressed. Kyrie Irving has to love the commitment that the Cavaliers, basically because he's frustrated
absolutely.
that you're playing with such little talent. And then, Chris Grant kept promising, he goes, basically promised, when we need to, we're going to add the talent. I didn't think they'd be able to turn around the roster as quick. Looking at last year's roster, I was just like, last year when they added the bench, they added Spades, they added, Ellington. Okay, well, the whole starting lineup was injured at that point. So
that's true.
You have those guys starting. Livingston was solid, but, their bench is just in a much better position than it was a year ago.
Absolutely.
And, they're in such better position than they were a year ago, and the talent level's there. It's something they just didn't have. It's something they lack. Don't forget having the fan presence at home games. They're going to sell more tickets this year. It's going to happen.
Right.
It's not like their attendance was bad over the last couple of years, but it will be much better this year. I can promise you that. Just with the thought, of the team going in there. If I were a team, honestly, I'm looking at, I look at the Chicago Bulls, and I still think the Bulls are a better team, obviously, when they're healthy. They have more experience. I don't know about as much depth after losing Bellinelli and guys like Nate Robinson, but the Bulls are still going to be a 60-win team this year, when Derek comes back. So the Bulls don't really have much to worry about. They have a strong front court. With Gibson, Noah, and Boozer, you've got a lot of depth in the front court that can play, legitimate minutes, and those guys are used to playing 44 minutes a night when needed. So I don't think it's as big of a deal for a team like the Chicago Bulls. Now, I honestly believe, I'm not saying they're going to beat Miami in a 7-game series, but what does Miami struggle against? They struggle against elite point guards, and they struggle against teams with big front courts. Something the Cavaliers have now, where they can go and sit there and attempt to compete with teams like Miami that they wouldn't have been able to do in the past.
Right.
They match up very well against Miami. Now, it's still going to be a problem. They don't have anyone that can stop LeBron right now, but right now there's a free agent, Ron Artest.
But the league doesn't have anybody that can stop LeBron right now either.
No, but you still don't forget they might be able to get Ron Artest at a very low price, and that's a move I've been able. People have been asking me over the last couple of days, and I go, I think I could totally see the Cavaliers jumping on it. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if they go after Artest.
To get Ron Artest on the Cavs. Wow, imagine that locker room with
Mike
Ron
Brown,
Artest.
Earl Clark.
Well, no. Hold on.
Bynum, I could totally see it.
Hold on. I'm just wondering the locker room dynamics with Andrew Bynum and his the dark cloud that hangs over him most of the time is that he has a lousy attitude, a poor work ethic.
Listen to Drew Holiday's comments even on him. Had nothing but good things to say about him. Said he wasn't a bad locker room presence last year. I've talked with other players in the league. I've never, Bynum didn't get along with, Bynum was hard to deal with. But Bynum still has 2 rings. When he was in L.A., he was tough to deal with, but the guy has 2 rings, and it speaks for itself. And he was a dominant center.
Well, yeah, but I mean, okay. I mean, he was a dominant center on this. All right, I was going to say Shane Battier has 2 rings, but that doesn't mean anyway. Okay,
it's different. Bynum was a star player on the Lakers.
No, this is true. Yeah, I
Bynum,
get you.
They wouldn't have won either ring without Andrew Bynum. Miami this year probably would have won the championship without Shane Battier.
Okay, fair enough. Now, and I want to get back to that point. I want to talk about Ron Artest, Meta World Peace. But before I do, I wanted to talk about what impact you think Mike Brown is going to have. He's bringing over former Lakers. Andrew Bynum had his best season when he was under Mike Brown's tutelage. Talk about how you see the because that was Mike Brown's biggest criticism in Cleveland was he was a great defensive coach, but he wasn't a good in-game manager, and he didn't have a really good offensive scheme. How do you think that's going to play out?
I wondered before the season, I said, what's he going to do? I said, this team has no talent on it, and this is before free agency. I said,
right.
Okay, and then you got Bennett and Carousel. I go, still, your defensive lineup's terrible. I said, but now that you add Bynum, you get a healthy Varejao back, you get, Tristan Thompson's improving, Waiters is improving. I think Mike Brown has a lot to work with in Cleveland. I'm very surprised at how fast Chris Grant was able to turn around the roster. This is not the OKC model. OKC does not go, they may have drafted like OKC, but OKC acquired their guys through trades, and Sam Presti missed out on some big trades. Traded Jeff Green for, Kendrick Perkins, who's done nothing. Traded James Harden, and Oklahoma City's inability to even sign a guy at the mid-level exception because they don't want to go over the cap is just ridiculous, and they're going to probably wind up losing Grant in 3 years because of it. But when I say this, though, Chris Grant has gone out, and Dan Gilbert's given him the flexibility and said, spend. We want to win now. We're ready to. I was looking at their moves in free agency. I said, there's no way this team's going to win about 40 games. I wasn't expecting to get Bynum or Jarrett Jack. I was expecting them to wind up with maybe, at best, maybe Darren Collison. I thought maybe they could wind up with Collison. But, I was expecting someone even on the lower end. I was expecting maybe – I like C.J. Watson a lot. But I was expecting maybe C.J. Watson at best.
And so you've been impressed. You've been impressed with everything that's happening.
I've been incredibly impressed with Chris Grant's ability. And if Andrew Bynum is healthy this year, there's a good chance he'll win Executive of the Year. We're going from 20-50 wins. Fans can call me crazy. I really don't care. I mean, I've been very, very right on most of the things I've said this offseason. I was even talking about Bynum and the Cavs a couple weeks ago, I believe, on the show.
Well, yeah, you were. I referenced before you came on the program that we talked about Bynum on the Cavs, although it was in a 3-way trade a year ago.
Well, I mean, I was also discussing this thing the Cavaliers can go after him in free agency. It's a low-risk signing. I said I can see the Cavaliers offering basically a 1-year max deal, and they did something similar to that, And I'm not, and like I said, I've been right. I'm right more of the time than I am wrong. I will say that. I'm usually correct. And I think they will be a very competitive team this year. I think they're going to be tough to beat. My top teams in the East this year, I have going in there, I've got, it changed around a little bit today, but I still have Miami 1, Chicago 2. I've got Brooklyn at 3 now after adding Karolinko. I think it's a huge addition.
Talk about that, because we only have it for a few more minutes. Talk about Karolinko. Let's move away from the Cavs.
I mean, this is a guy who just turned down $10 million a year to sign a 2-year, $6.2 million deal. I think winning's his priority. Well,
I also heard he might have screwed up as well, but either or.
I mean, I'm sure he did. If you turn down $10 million over 1 year, to take a 2-year, $6.2 million deal, yeah, something tells me you did screw up.
Well, I also just heard about an NHL player. I forget his name. I'm not a big hockey fan.
Yeah, he lost $77 million on the table.
Yeah, $77 million. They're like, I'm going to go into Russia now. He'll make money over there, but how do you walk away from $77 million? Anyway, Karolinko, that Nets team is looking stacked right now. Can it work?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've always been one of Billy King's biggest critics. I said he built the team too fast. They weren't patient enough. But now I'm looking at it and go, you added Karolinko. You added Sean Livingston, who will be a nice, bench piece, deep down the bench. But, I mean, they've got a solid roster. Their starting 5 is great. With Karolinko and Terry as your first 2 men off the bench, you have a huge veteran presence in there. I expect them to be very, very good. I've got them at the number 3 seed in the East. I've got Miami 4. I mean, not Miami, Indiana 4. I'm sorry. Cleveland 5, the Knicks 6. And then I think it's a crapshoot from there. But I've got Washington at 7, and then my A seed is a toss-up between Detroit, and people are going to laugh when I say this, but I don't expect Boston to be horrible if Rondo comes back all right. I don't think they're going to be terrible.
They're talking about getting Rondo over to the Knicks right now. I'm hearing those rumors.
If Rondo gets traded, then it's a whole different ball game. But they could definitely use Rondo. I'll say that.
Let me just jump back to Meta World Peace. What do you think his options are right now?
I think he's got a lot of options. I think Detroit's definitely a clean option for him. They could use a small forward, especially off the bench, depending what they do with their big, with their big three-man rotation, between what's his name, Greg Monroe, Andre Drummond, and Josh Smith. Does Smith start at the three? If Smith isn't exactly he takes a lot of deep 2-foot jumpers. He's more, you want him playing the power more than the small, which could be an issue. I don't think it's going to be a big issue, but could be an issue, when it comes to pass. But, Artest would be a nice addition there. I think Cleveland is a fantastic addition. I think Detroit and Cleveland are two great options for him, where he could probably start, and then, you look at other teams down the line that are still under the cap that could use their amnesty provision with them. It just depends who's going to willing to make them the biggest offer. I think there's some other good fits there too, but, it just depends who's willing to shell it out. Does he go to Denver? Is Denver a fit for him? Since they lost Iguodala. He does have a fair amount of options, to say the least.
Hey, well, let's talk about this in our remaining minutes here. By the way, we're talking with NBA scout Zak Baris. Be sure to follow him on Twitter. He's at ZBaris. That's at ZBARIS. In our last couple of minutes here, Zach, Vegas, with all these new guys, all the youngsters, are you going to be there? And whether you are or not.
I was there yesterday. I flew up for the day yesterday.
What did you notice yesterday?
I was there yesterday. I tweeted a couple pictures yesterday. I was there for the day yesterday.
Okay.
I had meetings and stuff yesterday, and I'm going back on Monday morning for the summer league. I had a couple days off, so I took advantage of that. But I will be there doing some prep work and scouting. There's not a ton that takes to go into the summer league. Most of those guys don't make your final roster. We have a couple guys on our summer league team. I look at it and maybe 3 or 4 of them will be on our actual roster. I think 4 guys on our particular summer league team will be on our roster, come during the season, most likely 4. But, that's how usually. I ran into the Cavaliers yesterday at the Bellagio when I was down at the cafe at the Bellagio having lunch. I saw, Kyrie was there, Waiters was there, and, Kevin Jones were the only 3 I was able to recognize. I did not recognize any of the other players. I don't know what Chris Quinn looks like. I don't know what those guys look like.
Right. Well, so Bynum wasn't there with his massive afro, then, is what you're saying. Not that he would be there anyway.
No, I did not see Andrew Bynum. I think I would recognize a 7-footer.
7-foot dude with a 3-foot afro.
I've seen Andrew Bynum multiple times in Beverly Hills before, walking out of the montage. And I've seen him there plenty of times, and I know what he looks like. I know what all these guys look like. It's just the D-leaguers and these guys that I never watched in college. I don't know what they look like. I have a good facial recognition, but no, I didn't. I saw the Cavs. I saw a bunch of other teams too. I was at practice yesterday, but it's definitely going to be interesting. The Vegas Summer League is a lot of fun.
Well, what kind of storylines are you looking for? Any players that you want to keep a special eye on top of the things that you're there to work on? And in our final minute here.
Not in particularly. I mean, I have some players that, of course, are going to be on my radar.
Yeah.
But I mean, you always do. But at the point where it is the Summer League too. It's a lot of these guys look fantastic during the summer league, and then come during the season, they do absolutely nothing. Take Perry Jones, for instance, last offseason. He was absolutely dominant during the summer league, putting up 25 points a game. Did nothing last year. I don't even know if he played more than a few games last year. And that's the issue with the summer league. It's just, it's rookies going up against other rookies.
Right.
So some are going to shine, some whatever fits their system, they're going to look great.
Final question then, Zach. How does it feel not having the Olympics to be a part of? We actually have a bronze medal winning female shooter from the 2008 Olympics coming on our program after you. But any thoughts having an off season where you don't have to be involved with the Olympics? And any thoughts?
The select team is training.
Okay.
But I'm not working with the team this year. I worked with the select team last year. And I'm sure I'll be doing it again next year. This year, my priorities, I just had too much work going on and wasn't able to get time off from my current job because I'll have to work during the practices. I have prep work to do. So this year I was not able to get off, but next year I've already cleared the schedule to be able to work with the select team or the regular team. I don't know what team I'll be working with next year. But, like I said, though, the 2016 Olympics are right around the corner now. I know it's only 2013, but when you think about it, it's not that far off.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I'll tell you what. Enjoy this brief moment of off season. We've had some comments like, man, does the NBA season ever stop? It's always either free agency or draft or Olympics or playoffs or the summer league. So yeah, if you have a little bit of time off, I know you're working really hard and flying all around the country. So enjoy this time off, and we'll connect next week and kind of talk some more free agent stuff. So.
All right, sounds good.
All right, Zach.
Thanks again for having me. As always, I appreciate it.
Sure thing. Take care. Be sure, everybody, make sure you're following Zach on Twitter. He's at Z Baris. That's Z-B-A-R-I-S. Always a good time when Zach joins the program. Coming up, we're going to take a little moment here. So if you're listening after the fact, you won't even notice. But if you're listening live, we got about a 28-minute downtime. Corey Cogdell, 2008 Women's Trap Olympic bronze medal winning athlete, will be joining us here on the Unhappy Hour. And after that, Liberty journalist Ben Swan. Ben Swan. Good friend of the show. He really is a part of the New American Media, and you guys are all a part of the New American Media, too. Because the New American Media, we don't take orders from anyone. We do our own thing. We connect and have fun. Yeah, we got to talk about sports and have some fun, because it's ridiculous covering nothing but politics every second of every day. It'll drive you crazy. So special thanks to Zak Baris once again. Please follow him on Twitter at ZBARIS, Z Baris. We'll be right back. My name's Brian Engelman. This is The Unhappy Hour on the TNAM radio network on thenewamericanmedia.com.